So we are so excited to have everyone here. And before our keynote, which is going to be incredible, I wanted to make a special announcement. First of all, I want to thank the Stanton Foundation. This research into local TV news would not have been possible without their support since 2017. And the fact that we've been able to partner with newsrooms across the country and put fellows in there and see those fellows get hired, but also see other newsrooms across the country pay attention to what they're doing and think about their future strategy just gives me hope for journalism. It gives me hope for the state of democracy. So I just want to thank them. And I also, yes, please clap. Dr. Frank Stanton was the president of CBS. He was a television pioneer. He was an innovator. And I am super excited to announce tonight the launch of the Northeastern Media Innovation Fund with an inaugural gift from the Stanton Foundation for $25,000. Our goal is to raise $500,000. I know we got a lot of students here. We got a lot of journalists here, so we may not have like deep pockets. But I know you may know people who have some deep pockets, and we would love to keep that fund growing. So you know where to find me. Thank you to the Stanton Foundation. At this point, I would like to hand it over to my boss at Northeastern, who has been so supportive of everything we've done in terms of video, and I just have appreciated that, Jonathan. Thank you, and he is going to introduce our keynote speaker.
Here we go.
One of the things that when you're teaching, but I think it's true for many of you coming from newsrooms when you get to hire young people or talk to them, when we get to deal with our students, is that every now and then, sometimes pretty regularly, you walk out of a class and you run into another professor in the hallway and you think, we're all going to be working for her one day. And no one proves that more than Swati Sharma. We knew from the moment she was here that she was an extraordinarily talented journalist, but she's turned out to be an extraordinarily talented manager, and also has been really key in, I guess we should play that little tone thing again, in reinventing what journalism can be, especially on the internet. Swati started out at the Boston Globe, quickly moved on to the Washington Post, where she became Deputy General Assignment Editor and also in charge of international and national security departments. She then went to The Atlantic, where she was once again promoted to be Managing Editor of The Atlantic, and then was recruited to run Vox as the Editor-in-Chief of Vox, and then was promoted, and she's now Editor-in-Chief and Publisher. She's had this extraordinary rise, and I think part of that is a testimony to her skill and her ability to deal with people, but part of it also is that I think she really represents the younger generation of journalists who are able to combine the traditional values of the news, fairness, of accuracy, but then add kind of an awareness of how you use technology, how you tell stories, how you alter the tone of what you're doing. One of the takeaways I was taking from panels earlier was this notion about authenticity. And I think that's not only true of video, I think it's true kind of across the board. And Vox has really pioneered explanatory journalism on the web, but also presented in a way that brings people in and gives people a chance to kind of encounter ideas maybe they wouldn't have held before. So I'm thrilled to invite her here, and we're thrilled to have her speak. And let's welcome, please, Swati Sharma.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Can y'all hear me okay? Yes? Okay, great. That was such a nice introduction. Thank you. I don't know if everyone thought that about me when I was in school, but that's great to hear.
You want us to redo the grades?
That A minus. Yeah. Yes. Well, thank you, everyone. I'm so thrilled to be here. I'm so thrilled because I went to school here. I'm also so thrilled to talk about video. I'm hoping I'm going to learn from y'all too, because it is really in a new pivotal phase, I believe. Something comes up, I will be asking y'all some of your thoughts. So I'm really excited to get started. I'm going to go over, I'm going to talk about Vox and where we are. Then I'm going to talk about Vox Video in particular, then the future of media, and then I'll talk about myself, best for last. So let's get started. How many of you have watched Vox Video? Okay, that's right. You know, when I talk about Vox, the first thing that often comes up is video, which is really great. I'm really proud of. Okay, so starting with where we started. So Vox started in 2014, more than 10 years ago, with Ezra Klein, who's having a great moment right now, which is really exciting. Matt Iglesias, Melissa Bell, and other journalists. And I worked with some of them when I was at the Washington Post. And their whole thought was, okay, when you consume journalism, you are often told this is what's happening. This is what's going on, but you don't always get that extra step of why does this matter? And that's something that Vox really tried to solve and is still trying to solve, and I think often solving. The other part is often when you're consuming information, when you're consuming journalism, you have to have read like 5 articles before you read maybe a New York Times. I love the New York Times, but sometimes it is like a high bar, right? And the idea of explanatory journalism is to be approachable. It is to be able to connect with people and to have more of a conversation with people. And you can do that on video, on audio, and text. And we really do try to do that. And I think you'll see, I think it comes across maybe the best on video. But that approachability is the core, is like the roots and so incredible, the essence of Vox, I should say. It is the essence of Vox. So we try to bring that forward in everything that we're doing. So Vox starts 2014, Obama era, policies everywhere. There's Obamacare, there's so much policy to explain. And again, it's like we said, it's like, how does policy really impact your life? That is what we're covering. That is what we're doing. It's great. You know, Obama did a big interview with Ezra Klein. That was huge. It was like one of the first emerging platforms that he spoke to. It was just really great time. Then 2016 happens, and people weren't really expecting, Trump to win, as we all know. In hindsight, maybe there were signs, but we've also, as an industry, explored that. And this is when Vox is, pivots to still being in that explanatory phase, but now it's a different type of phase. It's not so much policy, which is how it started, but it's really challenging what's happening. It's explaining things to people, and that really the really reaching people who are outside the bubble and helping them understand what's happening in our country was essential, and even more essential during COVID. And we really saw a lot of those, like, here's what you're supposed to do. Here's what social distancing means. I was at the Atlantic at this time, and I think we had award-winning coverage too, but it was very different than what Vox was doing. And I'll get into that importance of distinction in journalism. But it was incredible what Vox was able to do in that period. I started after the 2020 election in, actually, I think it's oh my God, no, tomorrow. Tomorrow is my 4-year anniversary of Vox, so yay. Thank you. And 4 years ago, what was happening 4 years ago? Google was declining, but Facebook, Twitter, those social media platforms, they used to direct so much traffic to so many sites. And you saw what happened to the BuzzFeeds, the Vices, so many other platforms who were really, really hurt by that change. And so I stepped in at that time. And it was still a time when, like, reach and really writing a lot of stories and getting the most amount of traffic was the model for Vox. What happened is when I came on, I had to change what we were doing. The other thing was happening is explainers wasn't a well-known word before when Vox started. By 2021, I mean, you read explainers, that comma explained headline is everywhere, everywhere. And so I had to think about, how do I make Vox distinctive? Because one thing I think about all the time is that every organization has to be distinctive. Every media organization has to be distinctive. It has to offer something that no one else does. The Atlantic offers something very specific. I think it's a magazine of ideas, bold arguments. Vox is not that. The North Star, I came in thinking the North Star is clarity. That's what we offer. And how can we offer that at every turn in every space? So I really embarked on that journey to figure out the clarity that North Star and how we can make sure that is in every part of the journalism. And that was a really great adventure. But I want to get to the video part, so I'm going to skip over exactly how I did that. But one thing that I really want y'all to think about is, okay, so we have 50 million visitors monthly. We have our website, we have our podcasts, videos, newsletters, social channels. We have all of this. But one thing I want y'all to think about is, I started as the editor-in-chief. I became the editor-in-chief and publisher. And I was hesitant to take that at first because the traditional background is, revenue and editorial is separate. I have both titles and I'm really proud of it. And it really did make all the difference. And the reason is because the journalism and the business model do have to work together. And what I was able to do is think about, okay, I know all the things I want to do, but how do I actually have a business model where we will thrive? And what is a journalism what is the business model that supports the journalism I want to do? That was a driving question, not the other way around. And what I believed is I wanted a community. I wanted consumer revenue as the business word, but like a membership program. And we launched that. We also made connections with foundations because we do a lot of work like biodiversity and other animal welfare journalism that foundations want to support. So instead of having really all of our revenue from advertising, I embarked on a journey to diversify our revenue. And that is, again, that's something that as a journalist, I hadn't thought about before. But today you have to think about both things. And there are ethical ways to think about it. That does not mean you're, suddenly, outselling things, like changing your journalism to sell. Like, that's not what I'm saying. But there is a way to really do this in an ethical way. And I did do it. And I think it made our journalism stronger. So when I was talking about the whole journey that I went on to figure out how Vox is distinctive, one thing that when I first came on, I made our mission statement focused on making the world better. And I thought that was really important. Vox is so earnest, and that is so much of what our journalism does. We cover things that are undercovered. We empower people with information. We do all of that I think does make the world better. But in the Trump era, I think this is what we do. This is how we're distinctive. We are not covering every twist and turn. We are being very thoughtful with what we cover. And I will talk more about that and how you see that in the journalism. But again, that distinctiveness is so incredibly important. Building trust with your audience is so incredibly important. And speaking of audience, so one thing that I think sometimes in legacy media, this was a little bit lost, but at Vox, we serve the people, we serve the audience. And we worked very hard in defining who that is. Instead of just like, we all have people in our mind that we're thinking about. I'm thinking about my cousins in Seattle all the time. We all have our groups. But for us, it is really the people who are curious, confused, and overwhelmed. I think that is our main focus right now, because in this era, I think people want information. And what better way to strengthen our democracy than provide information? So we're focused on that. The policymakers, policy nerds, have been consuming us from the beginning and continue to. And then it's the do-gooders, the activists, the people who do want to make the world better. And these are 3 segments, and they really do reflect our audience. Now, again, that is central to everything that we do at Vox, and that is incredibly important, not for the journalism, first and foremost. So now, I want to talk about Vox Video. So Vox Video launched at the same time as the site. and we launched podcasts later. And really, the goal was, how can we really help people understand what's happening? How can we spark the curiosity? And that was a big driver for our YouTube audience. That we decided, they decided, I wasn't there then, to be on YouTube, and I think it was to reach the maximum number of people. And the idea here was really, before this, you didn't have explainer videos that were animation led, that were beautiful, that had this kind of explanatory tone that basically have been used by educators, that young people, that international audience. This is all on YouTube. We don't really have that level of connection really on any other platform quite like we do on video. And we do really hard-hitting videos. I wanted to show you an early video that we did, and I want you to tell me how many views you think. Don't Google it, please. But just guess how many videos you think it got. But it's a short, fun video.
Recognize this sound? If you pop or crack your joints, you probably do. What happens to our joints when we crack them? And is it bad for you? Synovial fluid is this lubricant-like substance that's found in between your joints. It kind of looks like an egg yolk. So when you stretch out your joint, you are releasing gas, and that gas forms a bubble and it collapses and pops. In order to crack the same knuckle again, you have to wait about 20 minutes for the gas to return back to that fluid. So how is that different from a pop you hear when you stand up quickly? The sound you're probably hearing then is the snapping sound tendons make when they slide between muscles or over bones. When a joint moves, the tendon snaps quickly over it and it makes a popping sound. So is a knuckle cracking habit safe? Probably. Donald Unger was sort of a self-described researcher who chose to pop the joints in one of his hands for 60 years, but not the other one. And he wanted to find out if popping your knuckles would actually give you arthritis. After 60 years of doing it, he found that he didn't have any more arthritis in one hand than in the other. Most medical sources agree with his findings, but there's still a chance it's not good for you. One 1990 study did find that cracking your knuckles over a long period of time led to hand swelling and decreased grip strength, but there hasn't been any follow-up research on that. So while cracking your knuckles might not be bad for you, there's still no guarantee that your popping habit won't annoy the people around you.
Yes! Oh, amazing! Okay, so usually our videos get maybe between, 3 million is a good video. It's an excellent video. 500 is, kind of where we are lately, maybe 2 million. How many do you think this got? Okay. 66 million views. Yes. It was one of the first, really truly viral videos. I don't know if we've had it, and maybe we've had some that have gotten more. But it was like this video, which is so fun, and like 1 minute and 24 seconds or something. But this is the kind of tone and that curiosity that just didn't exist on the internet. Now you see this everywhere, but at this time this didn't exist, and this is a part of this was a time when Vox Video started. It was a group of people who worked really as a startup culture by themselves. They had some rules, which is we will not tell a story unless it's visual. Now, I was at the Washington Post. That wasn't the case. Really, video, and this is not a bad model, it's just different. Video was basically serving the journalism, the print text journalism. Vox, they worked on their own, which was really amazing at that time. If anything, when I came on, I'm like, oh, we all have to work together, because it was like an era where I'm like, okay, we have to have more connections to better the journalism across our site. But to start out, that did need to happen to result in this kind of creation and this kind of work that I think was so incredibly important. It also led to, if you all remember, there was an Explained series on Netflix. This video, the YouTube videos helped start VMS, Vox Media Studios. If you all know this, Vox, I work on Vox. Vox Media includes New York Mag and The Verge and Polygon and so many at Eater, really great publications, and they're my cousins, but we're in the same company. But VMS truly incredible. Okay, so now we have 12.5 million subscribers. In journalism, there isn't quite something that has this level of prominence and this level of connection with the members. I haven't seen anything like it. So now I want to play you a video that we created for when we reach 10 million subscribers. And the reason is it gets into a little bit about how the videos are made and the thinking that goes into it.
Thank you for subscribing to Vox. There are 1 million of you. This is insane. I cannot believe there are 3 million of you.
That's like 1, 2, 3, 4 million. I can't believe there's 8 million of you out there.
So I want to shout out Tal Lemming. He is the artist behind the typeface that we have used in literally every single one of our videos, which is Balto.
I wanted it to feel like a friend who knows a lot about what they're talking about, because that's what typefaces do. They give the tone to the words.
Ben Marriott's tutorials are really helpful, and I especially used his paper cutout tutorial for many of my collage videos. The uterus that I made.
One internet resource that I use a lot for visual inspiration is Design Inspiration. I hope that's how you say it.
I want to shout out Laurent Dury. He is a composer on APM. I asked him if he would play some music for me, and he played a little jingle.
I guess when you're making the music, are you ever thinking about where it's going to wind up?
No. Sometimes I'm feeling when writing, it could go to that type of documentary, for example, but most of the time I'm wrong.
For a lot of our videos that I've worked on, we use David Rumsey's map collection, and it just makes it so easy to see how a region's borders have been recorded through time.
So I cut it short so that I have one more video to play, I'm sorry, but it's a good one. Okay, so 12.5 million subscribers, this much reach, this much success. What is happening now in the video space? Everyone is doing explainer videos. The the landscape has really, really changed, even just in the last month, 2 months, 6 months. It really keeps changing. I think it's an opportunity, but you really do have to think about how we change with the times, and I'll get more into the future of media. But it is really quite remarkable how much video has changed from where we started to where we are now in terms of explainer videos are everywhere. That kind of animation work is everywhere. What is next for Vox Video? And this is something that I've been grappling with and trying to figure out. So what I've been thinking about a lot is, and we're going to talk about each one of these things, but podcast video, social video, trying out new formats, thinking about the membership program I was telling you and how it relates to video, especially because we have such a large community on YouTube. And of course, continuing what we're known for, which we do have a loyal audience and we do want to keep serving them. So one thing that I started doing is, instead of having videos that have a name like Earworm or Missing Chapter, which are some amazing series we used to have, what we've been pivoting toward is actually focusing on the different types of formats we can have that vary with our classic one. Vox 101 is, you can guess what that is. Explainer Club, you'll see it, Explain It to Me, which is fun. It's an audience question-led feature. Interviews, just having more, and of course Shorts, which is blowing up. but just really experimenting with the format and really thinking about what's next. And again, the trick that a lot of media organizations need to do is you have to change, but you can't give up why you were distinctive, because then why do people want to keep building a relationship with you? So you have to balance both of these things, and that's what we're trying to do. So Explainer Club, oh, I have 2 more videos, I'm sorry, but they're good. They're important. Okay, Explainer Club is an example of, you saw the videos we were doing before. What is one of the huge changes that we've seen with videos? Exactly, that's exactly it. And this is what you'll see in this, is that was really good. I got that really fast. Yeah. Human element. And that's one thing that we've been trying to do. Our producers, that's not what they do. They're not the talent. They don't like being in front of the camera. And this was their idea that they came up with in one way how to do this. So let me play this for you.
So Kim, I'm happy to try a little amateur forensic work here. I've collected fingerprints from a few of our colleagues, and what you see here is 4 fingerprints I took, 2 of which are from the exact same finger. So I want to see if you can match which 2 prints are from the same finger. This is Explainer Club, where video producers like me sit down and explain something to one of our coworkers. And today, that is Kim.
I'm a video producer, and I work on primarily health and science content.
And I do history, culture, and sometimes science videos.
So I think A and B, that's my first guess. And that's just because I see this like little swirl coming up. And these 2 just look so different because you have like this little hump down here. I think I still want to say A and B are the same.
Okay.
I feel like I completely blew that.
No.
I feel like the okay was a little like...
You are... No. The answer was A and C.
Oh, shoot.
They're both from the left thumb. So what is interesting to me about this, though, is all of these fingerprints are from the same person.
Oh.
I think we all know every person has their own fingerprint.
Right.
But I didn't know before I started working on this that each individual finger on your hands is different from each other. Did you know that?
Like they're completely different?
Police practice, when you get fingerprinted, they'll take all 10.
That makes sense, yeah. But that makes it seem like it's so much harder to actually identify if a fingerprint belongs to a person if every single one is different.
Right. Without this full reference, you wouldn't be able to match one fingerprint to another and say this came from the same hand or even the same person. But there is this new AI tool that says it can do it. That's what we're going to talk about today.
Okay, cool, yeah.
Cool. And we're going to probably run the logo there.
Logo.
Okay.
So you see how different that was, but it still had the same essence of Vox. It was just a new way of connecting with our audience. And it's something that we're seeing much more desire to have that connection, to have that human element. And that's something that we're trying to do more of, but in a Voxy way. Now, how many of you consume your podcasts on video? Okay, a few of you. This is growing like crazy. I think y'all know, you probably heard about that in the, this last election. This is where the momentum is, and this is what a lot of places are thinking about. I mean, the Daily's doing this once a week, or they're going to do it once a week, or they're thinking, I don't know. But it's like it's a thing that's happening. I mean, it is where there's a lot of momentum, and I think there's many reasons for it. I think that just the YouTube as a platform, I think people do like seeing people's faces on. I think they're consuming podcasts just even more in while they're home cooking or cleaning, and it's just where the attention is. And so we are also experimenting there. Ta-Nehisi Coates, when he wrote with his latest book, he did an interview with us, and I think that's one of the first ones we recorded, which is like a pretty ambitious thing, but it was great. And these are still we're still working on this. These aren't quite the classic things that we do. Our audience, we'll see how they connect to them, but the podcast audience, we do believe are going to learn that, love them. So we're trying to balance, how do we use our YouTube channel and how do we reach this new space that we're in? And again, it's that competing in the space where you do have the Rogans and the Manosphere, podcasts. And, in that space, what is our space that is authentic to us, that actually solves our greater mission of providing clarity to people and cutting through the noise? That's what we're still going to do, and we're figuring out ways to do that. Social video is huge. How many of you get your news from social platforms, from TikTok? Okay. It's the numbers are like 39% of, I think it's higher, but 39% of young adults get their news from TikTok. And we're seeing it, we're feeling it, and we're trying to, it's been a fun experiment because our YouTube videos are so beautifully crafted, and the TikTok platform wants to be a little bit more casual. So we've done a really great job, but it's just like a funny space for us to be in. And I've really enjoyed what we've been able to do, and our journalists are really on it. And because Vox is a place of innovation, of creation, we've just been doing that. We've just been trying new things, we've been experimenting, and we've been seeing how far we can go. But it's been a joy, and we do this on YouTube Shorts, on Instagram Reels, on TikTok, and I do believe there's even more to do here. Okay, this is the last video I'll play, but this is that membership I was talking about again, connecting the journalism to the business model, but really like making the business model serve what we're doing. And during this video got, I think it was 3 million plus views, which is good these days, especially. On top of that, you'll see how all of Vox was really a part of it, which is again that difference of that didn't really happen before, and we've made it essential now. But this was dropped right after the election, and I think it is 7 minutes long, but I think it's worth watching because it's so good, and really, really shows you what we can do even today when everyone else is doing explainer videos.
Donald Trump will become the 47th President of the United States.
I want to thank the American people for the extraordinary honor of being elected your 47th President and your 45th President.
So I think we should start off by just saying what's happening, and then my big question is going to be, how should we be thinking about this?
We now know that Donald Trump is returning to the White House. American voters have seen what Trump had to offer, and at least a critical mass of them decided they want to do the same thing again.
I called up some colleagues at Vox to ask what we should be making of this moment, and I ended up spending a long time talking to Zach.
I'm Zach Beecham. I'm a senior correspondent at Vox.
Zach writes about reactionary politics, the right wing, basically. And the thing that he really wanted me to understand is that even though the outcome of this election is the same as the 2016 election, the Trump who is about to become president is different.
Donald Trump is much more organized. He knows what he's doing, has a series of distinct policy objectives that he's reiterated again and again. It will be in a lot of ways fundamentally different than what we all lived through 4 years ago.
Lock up the Bidens. Lock up Hillary. Lock them up.
The first time Trump was president, he wanted to do all sorts of very controversial things, and a lot of times he didn't actually end up doing them. One big example is wanting his critics and political opponents to be prosecuted. He was constrained by other parts of the political system, the guardrails of democracy. I'm Andrew Prokop. I cover politics. The guardrails encompass first Congress and the courts, but also within the executive branch, you have Trump's own appointees for top positions who often last time around proved unwilling to carry out some of the things he wanted to do. Then you also have the permanent civil service, career employees that he can't fire at will. First of all, the courts have grown more conservative and more Trump-friendly since he put 3 of his own appointees in the Supreme Court. Congressional Republicans have grown much more pro-Trump. Trump and the people around him want hardcore MAGA true believers staffing the government who will not have these pesky qualms about legality or ethics or things like that. And regarding the civil service, Trump wants to use an executive order to reclassify thousands of people with civil service protections against firing as political appointees who he can fire, to then put in a lot of MAGA loyalists in their place instead. He's had 4 years to basically stew over, what he didn't get to do last time and what he would do differently if he was given another chance. And now he will seemingly get that chance.
We're going to have the largest deportation in the history of our country.
The mantra that Trump had on the border on 2016 was build the wall. That was his centerpiece of his immigration platform. That sort of changed over the course of his presidency, and increasingly he wanted to turn his attention not to the border, but to the interior of the US, the undocumented population here. I'm Nicole Norea, and I cover politics and immigration for Vox. Under Biden, there were record levels of people arriving on the border. We've seen those numbers come down significantly in 2024, but when Americans are polled, large portions of them say that they want mass deportations. They might be thinking about people being deported immediately after they arrive on the border, but that's not what Trump's contemplating. He's trying to go into communities across the US, and we're talking about people who have lived here, for years and decades. That would sort of involve huge investments in law enforcement and also the cooperation of local law enforcement agencies, which I'm not sure we would see necessarily in Democratic states, but let's say in states like Texas and Florida, certainly you might find law enforcement willing to cooperate with federal immigration authorities there.
A landmark decision in American history as it relates to presidential power.
When Trump initially took office, the median vote on the Supreme Court was a moderate conservative, someone who would draw the line somewhere. Then Trump appointed a third of the United States Supreme Court. I'm Ian Millhiser. I cover the Supreme Court at Vox. Trump v. United States is the decision that came down last July concerning Special Prosecutor Jack Smith's indictment of Trump for trying to steal the 2020 presidential election. Trump made this really outlandish argument that he could not be charged with a crime for any official acts he committed while president. Pretty much everyone thought that that argument was silly and ridiculous, and there was no chance that the court would ever adopt it. And then all 6 of the Republican justices adopted it. What that decision said, it said that Donald Trump is immune from criminal prosecution for crimes that he commits using the official powers of office. Trump is allowed to give any order he wants to the Department of Justice. The basic matter is just that anything he does can potentially be beyond the scope of the criminal justice process.
More than 40,000 Palestinians killed since the October 7th Hamas massacre.
Right now, the situation on the ground in Gaza is an extraordinary humanitarian crisis and a moral stain on the United States for enabling so much of this to happen. But it can always get worse. Trump has a blank check approach to Israel. Advisors don't believe in any of the even feeble restraints that the Biden administration had put on Israeli conduct. There are factions inside the Israeli government that have different visions of how to conduct the war. The extreme right on Netanyahu's flank, people like Bezalel Smotrich and Itamar Ben-Gvir, believe that Trump will let them do what they want based on what he said, what his advisors say, and what his political coalition at home wants.
Are you on board with the way the IDF is taking the fight in Gaza?
You've got to finish the problem.
These people have a maximalist vision of what they want the war to be. Actually seizing and taking Gaza for Israel and returning to settlement, right, to rebuilding Israeli outposts, moving Israeli Jewish citizens in to make sure that its control over the area never slips. That would mean not just temporary eviction of Gazans from their homes and their cities, which would be bad enough. It would mean creating a massive permanent refugee population. Outside of Gaza, in the West Bank, we can only imagine. Previous American position has been you shall not under any circumstances annex parts of the West Bank. It would be Israel declaring, in essence, its willingness to rule over the Palestinians in perpetuity. What I do know for sure is that a Trump administration would do nothing to punish them for it.
So again, I gave you all of the answers. I was going to ask you questions, but you saw that. You saw how that was very different from what we did before. But what I loved about this is that you saw the faces of our reporters. You saw the expertise. You saw the might that Vox brings, and the part that it got too long. But in this video, there is a membership ask here, asking people to become a part of the Vox community, and it was maybe one of our largest drivers to conversions to date. Conversions meaning people becoming members, and it is really because it is the Voxy voice. Some people may not agree with it, but the clarity with which they got a sense of what was about to happen, the timing. We did two versions, a Trump one and a Kamala Harris one, and this published right after the election. We were ready. And I think, again, moving to this new place, having that classic Vox element of having those graphics in there just shows like how we are evolving and how we're thinking about what people want and desire from us. And so, again, a great example of that trust building, of that relationship that we want to build with people. Okay, so again, we have evolved. We've done so many different things. We're going to do even more experiments and adventures ahead with video. We're really going to keep going here. But what we're just going to stay true to is serving our audience. That just has to be the thing that we do, because it's what we do. It's what makes us distinctive. It's that clarity, that North Star of clarity. And I think if we lose that, we lose why we're important, why we matter in this moment. So that remains our focus despite all the change. And the reason I bring this up is in my talk about the future. Okay. A lot of you are worried. Of course, it's good to be worried, because then if you're worried, you'll do something about it. But I'm feeling, of course, there's a lot. There's AI. There's the mistrust in media that we're seeing. There's this presidency that has just been not a partisan take. There has just been more attacks on the media than we've seen before. But I am cautiously optimistic, and the reason is because what has not changed is people's desire for information, whether they're all ages, and especially young adults. Younger people want information. The way they're getting information has changed. And I think there's a lot of ways to combat that. So first of all, I'll talk about that second. First, I'm going to talk about the other bigger, huge problem that we're all facing and thinking about right now, at least I am, is the trust in media and also the news avoidance. Those two things. And what can y'all do? What can we all do about it? So what Vox has been doing is we already are very approachable, easy to follow. You can really get a sense of, you don't have to be scared. Some people, it does feel like a large barrier to really consume information. With Vox, it's not that hard. We really try to be as approachable as we can, but that's one part of it. The other things we do is, as journalists, we do two things. We say when we're wrong, and we tell you when we don't have the answers. So one example of this, my favorite product, my current favorite product, trending right now, which you all should sign up for, is called the Log Off. And this is a newsletter. It's a daily newsletter. It's 200 to 300 words, and it'll tell you the one thing you should care about that Trump did that day. And if there's nothing to pay attention to, you can log off. That's the idea. The idea is you're in there, you get your information, you log off. That's it. And that is our journalism that clearly reflects our mission statement. The other great thing about it is, a few weeks ago on Wednesday, our Patrick Weiss, the person who writes the newsletter, he wrote, "Pay attention to tariffs. That's all you need." The next day, nothing happened. And the subject line was something like, "I was wrong." That doesn't really happen in journalism. And I'm so proud that does happen not so often, like we're often right, but it does happen. It does happen. And I think what better way to build trust with people than to be open with them? Also telling them when we don't know things. I think that is also important. Telling them when they do have an opinion, telling people that like, I'm an expert and this is my take. We hear all the time, people consume our work, they don't agree with it, but they still appreciate that perspective. And I'm really, really glad that we have created that kind of environment. The other thing we do is we know that there is news avoidance that occurs, so the log off solves that. The other thing we do is we haven't talked about podcasts. Vox has really amazing podcasts. Today Explained, our daily podcast, when they're covering something tough, they play uplifting music. Their whole goal is like, how can we cover the news in a way that does not make you want to turn away? And that is what they do. And listen to the way they talk, listen to the fun music, the tone, the casual conversation. Those are things that we do that really help build that trust. And then there's, of course, we also try to be solutions oriented. We have a new newsletter called Good News, which is all about, it's not like there was a cat in the tree and someone saved the cat. It's more like, here are reasons to be optimistic. Here are the innovations that are coming. Very, very Voxy as well. But the trust in news is a huge thing that I think we can work on now, and we should keep working on. Now, and so when I think about my optimism for the future, one thing, one of my mentors said this to me: we all have to be comfortable with change as journalists. We've all heard that. We all know that. I think we all have to thrive, in transformation and change. We know that. The thing that you need today is a spine. You have to have courage. You have to be ready to take on tough criticism. You have to be ready to try new things that you may not have been ready to try. And that will help you keep going. And what you need to do is, journalism will not go away, but maybe the way people consume it. I mean, if you read the New York Times all the time, you're just constantly encountering videos. There will soon be better versions of news articles that are videos. There is going to be more and more and more innovation. Journalism will adapt and change, but I don't think it's going to go away. AI does pose a threat, but I think the way I think about it is, what will not be replicated is original journalism. Those stories that are hidden in plain sight, that accountability, that is necessary, and it's not going to go away. There's going to be a lot more changes. There's been so many changes since, I was at Northeastern in 2008. But I still believe that we are going to have to all work on it, but I do believe that there is a bright future ahead. Different future, but a bright future ahead. Okay, now I'm going to get to the part that y'all have been waiting for. This is about me. I'm going to try to keep this brief, and you can ask questions. So I grew up in California, and my whole family was moving to Massachusetts, and for many reasons, I decided to move with them, and I decided to go to a community college in Worcester, Quinn Sigmund. I don't know if anyone knows what this. Yeah, shout out. And I went there for a year, and it was great. I got this internship in the State House because I thought I wanted to do politics. And then I transferred to UMass Amherst, had a full ride, went there. It was a little too rural for me, but my Boston Globe co-op actually happened through there, and I was in the Boston Globe opinion section. And there I met a journalist named Walter Robinson, who goes by Robbie. And he was a professor here, and he of course uncovered the Catholic priest scandal, and is one of the best journalists around. And he was about to start at Northeastern, and he was like, "Swati, just come be my student." And I said yes. And that's when I transferred to Northeastern. And this is where I really found my home. And the reason is because I love academics. I'm curious, but there was something about a hustle culture and a desire of not to just not to look at books, but explore the world. And I felt that here. I felt that at Northeastern in a way that I didn't really in previous places. And the connections I have, the friendships I have, I still have. But it is really that hustle, that creativity, that desire to really learn from the field that I really got from my time at Northeastern. I also had the most fun at Northeastern because I studied abroad in Paris when I was here. So that was a big bonus. But it was incredible. So after I did my co-op with through UMass Amherst, I then just kept my relationships with the Boston Globe, which Northeastern let me. I would work part-time. I would then got a news internship there. I think it was an internship co-op, but I was basically there all the time. One of my favorite memories is 2008 when Obama won. I was in the newsroom until 3 a.m., but I was taking Professor Dukakis's class at 8 a.m. So I rushed over there to make his class, and that was one of the greatest moments to have him give us a lecture after the election, which was amazing. And for him to give us his perspective on what we just witnessed with Obama's election. And so I really just loved my time. But then I graduated in the fall of 2008, and we know what happened then, which is a recession. And I was unemployed, and I worked, if y'all know the Natick Mall, I was working at the Natick Mall. I was working at a Kate Spade that then shut down. So I was really in a cycle. I was nannying, and then I was applying to grad school. I had some blog going. I kept trying, and I got into Columbia for journalism grad school for 2010 fall. But what happened a month before? I got 3 job offers, and all of those job offers were directly tied to people I met at Northeastern. It was Robbie. It was Professor. It was on and on. It was Boston Globe, and I ended up going to the Boston Globe. But it was the connections that I made here that helped me get those jobs. I stayed in touch. I really, again, created those bonds, created those relationships. And it wasn't about like networking. It was networking to get ahead. It was about, again, curiosity, which is the best journalism trait. And that curiosity led me to build relationships with people, and then make it to, make it so that I was able to have those opportunities in front of me. And then I was at the Boston Globe, and I worked weekends, I worked nights. I was doing hyper-local journalism then. Doesn't really exist now, but it was a digital producer role, which doesn't really exist now either. But it was a very different time. And one story I'll tell you, because it's very Boston, is on, when the Boston Marathon bombing happened, I was working, I would like go out a lot. So they were like, you should be the things to do nightlife editor. And I just said, yes, my passion was politics, but I like saying yes. And I said yes. And that day, most of the culture team was out covering the marathon. And I was there having to cover for arts and entertainment. And I wrote a blog post that was about how Giselle joined Instagram. And that published like minutes before the Boston Marathon bombing. But what did I have? Because I worked all those weekends and worked politics, I knew how to run the homepage. And really not that many people did. So then I covered the Boston Marathon bombing. I was part of that Pulitzer Prize winning package. I went back again on that Thursday night when the chase happened, because I happened to be out, and I went in at 2 a.m. because not that many other people were out then and up, and I was. And it was one of the most extraordinary moments of my life, and it did make me want to go back to news. And then I went to the Washington Post, and I had a bunch of jobs there, and then the Atlantic, and then Vox. But one thing I'll say, I'll leave you with 2 things. One, I used to say that you should hustle. You should like try to meet people, use your curiosity, and then find the people who actually make the decisions, because it's not usually like the masthead or who's senior. It's usually like someone else, and like get to know the place. And I'm an outsider, so I got to really study a place and understand it, and that's how I moved ahead. And I used to say that's the thing to do, and I still think it is in many circumstances. But someone pointed out to me, someone a lot younger than me, and they said, yes, but like, should we be doing that? Like, shouldn't it be easier? Shouldn't there be paths for us? Shouldn't there be growth for us? And so as a leader and manager, I really try to create a newsroom. One of my sayings is clarity is kindness. And I try to tell people, like, this is what you need to do to get ahead. I have really high standards for our managers to say, this is where you need to grow. This is your opportunity. And I really try to make sure that people know where they can go, try to help them, even if it is getting them a job somewhere else, so that they can grow. Because I really did have to hustle and find my way, and I want people to have more than that. The last thing I'll say is, the one piece of advice that really helped me is everyone should know why they're here, why they're in journalism. It will help you because it does get rough. And if you have a personal thesis, it will take you a long way. So my personal thesis is ignorance causes a lot of evil in society, and the best way to combat it is information. And that has been leading me and helping me through really any tough decision I make. I think about, does this meet my goal? Does this meet what I believe the society needs? I think about that all the time. And all of you should have your own mission. And that could be, I want to be famous. I want to be on TV. I want to be a TikTok star, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be noble. It can be whatever it is that drives you, but just keep that, because it will carry you through the rough times. It'll help you make decisions when you have to make tough ones, and it works really well in interviews. So I'll leave you with that. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Lottie. That was so interesting. Love hearing about the Northeastern experience. I also had Professor Dukakis when I was in grad school here, and he was such a treat to have as a professor.
It was great.
Would love to take questions from the audience.
Yes. First. Hello. Oh, excellent. Thank you again for sharing everything. It was awesome. I give it this. But to talk about the human element, right? And I'm working on kind of overhauling our social strategy at NBC across these markets, and trying to translate that into social content, short form content. I noticed that like some of the examples we showed seemed like kind of explainers and things like that, but are you trying any strategies that add more of the human element, more behind the scenes, how the sausage is made? How's that going for Vox right now?
We definitely, some of those member videos I talked about actually do show the behind the scenes, and with video specifically, people want that. If anything, I believe if we just started something which is like, how can you make your own explainer videos, it would blow up, which maybe we should do. Just need more funding for that. If there's anyone who wants to give, any foundations, you can give us money too. Yeah, I think it's absolutely the thing we need to do. And I think we've done a good job with the human element, but I think we have to go a lot farther. And people know that. We're all thinking about ways to do that. And these are the beginnings of more, but I think we really have to go a lot farther, and we're starting to. And you feel that like with our podcast hosts, there is more of that familiarity and connection. And so, yeah, we have ways to go, but you're right. I think there's more that people want. I'll say that. And yeah, they crave it. Yeah.
Or like your Big Brother.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, and that's exactly, that is what Vox does too. So even in our text and our writing, we try to bring that into our work, but with video, we have a huge opportunity. Great question.
I'm curious about just the business model, because I think so many people love this creative content, the animation, they want to produce all this stuff, but then everyone's always like, well, how do we make money off of it? You're talking about memberships. I mean, how's it going?
So that's a really great question. I was really going to have a whole big section on the business model, and it got a little depressing, so I moved away from that. It is, and it's where it gets like tough and depressing is YouTube. Like, how do you make money off of YouTube? That is a really hard thing to do. And so for us, like, look at the success we had on YouTube. That doesn't translate into a business model. And you don't see a lot of places, really anyone who's had that success as a publication. As an individual creator, you can make money because you're just paying for yourself. As an institution, it's really hard. So we have had to pivot. We have had to downsize the team. We have had to figure out what sponsorships we can get, what can we get from foundations, how we can do more membership work. We have had to tie it more to the business model, but without sacrificing what we do and who we are. And it's extremely hard in the with third-party platforms. Now, it's not all depressing. There's a lot of hope. which is like with membership, we're really, you know, I think in the Trump era, it is just a hard thing to cover because there's so much news and so much information. And if you want a healthy democracy, what you want is for people to be informed. And again, this is not about politics. It's just people want information and need information, and we should all seek that. And what has been happening is that people are interested. People do want information. We're seeing it in our membership numbers. And that it's not because of the business model, but because of like, as an American and as an optimist, I really am just so delighted to see that people care. I wasn't sure to see how much people would engage with it, but it's just people do want to engage with it. And so that is a really you know, heartening thing to see. But in terms of the tough thing with the TikToks and the YouTubes and Instagrams is the business model part of it. So you have to figure out how to bring people back. So we have that 12.5 million subscribers on YouTube, but they're not subscribers of Vox. And having that connection and bringing them back happens with, y'all should go watch some of our membership videos. It happens with those when we're really telling people behind the scenes how we made this and how it came together. And that does drive people to become members.
My question for you is, I inherently think of Vox, a lot of their videos, as political. And you're saying that they're not. And I don't disagree with you, but my question is, what is the answer to the both sidesism? And this is just fact, this is just truth, but there's so much of America that doesn't believe this is fact or truth, even though you're being completely transparent. How do you address that? How do you answer that?
That's really tough. Yeah, I mean, I will say the first part is like a lot of our videos are political, and we notice when we do political videos, people are like, we want this, we want more of this. And I'm like, become a member and support us and we'll give you more. We're working on that messaging. But yeah, but the political videos, we have a lot of them, and I think that is a tough thing. And I think the way I think about what Vox does is we show the work, we really try to show the work, and two, we don't hide the fact that this is where we're coming from, this is how we think, this is our perspective. And again, in those member notes, when people join our community, I know a lot of conservatives who are Vox members, and that is, and people who are on the left and center left. There's like so many factions now. And I think the key is that we are, people know where we stand, and they know that they can disagree with us and walk away. And again, there's not a one uniform take. There's many people who have many differing opinions at Vox. And so the key is like, as long as people are like consuming information and knowing that they won't agree with it, but walk away with it, that's what I want. And that's what I'm trying to do. And I think we're seeing success in helping, like really getting to the root and giving people the context of the thing. And sometimes we do have more of a point of view, and sometimes we just, we don't. We're really trying to give you that background. But I think like one problem that I think sometimes you do see in media is it tries to, you know, both sides things to death. I'll give you an example, and I won't say what publication, but it was a story about like, will there be a Trump bump? And in, you know, when Trump is president, it was written after he won, and the story said, will he have a Trump bump? And it said, he may not have a Trump, there may not be a Trump bump, which is more traffic if on Trump coverage. And the reason the writer said there may not be a Trump bump is because Trump may not do news-making things. He may be more like somber in the way that he was when he won the election. And I'm like, okay, come on, like, I'm not saying you have to say he was, even criticize him, but like, it's the Trump loves making news, and we know that. And that kind of both sides, I'm like, that doesn't even, that's not ethical in my opinion. You can say like, Trump will make news. Now, will people pay attention or not? That is a good question. But that is the thing we try to stay away from. And I think it's really important for us to keep bringing people along.
And we have a question in the back. So while the mic is going up there, I'm curious about the membership drive, how that's working, because when I'm teaching students, they're like, we're not paying for content. So are people paying for it?
I mean, I have more faith that young people will pay for it. I mean, there was just new data that came out about like how many Americans pay for Spotify for music. I mean, I think actually young people are more used to paying for things. and they may not, but I do believe that it's like, you know, we do have a paywall, but we do have a lot of information that's accessible. So we just see a mix of people who become members. It's not a straight. I started the Atlantic subscription program, which is a straight paywall, which is very different from what Vox is doing. Membership is like you want to become a part of the community. You want this kind of relationship. We give perks. We're going to have a really big feature that I can't tell you about yet. That's why I think we have a huge opportunity here.
That's great.
I'm sure there's a wide range. Thank you for an amazing presentation, by the way. This is great. So I'm sure there's a wide range, but if you could hone in on an average, like how long does one Vox video take to create and how much does it cost?
I don't know about cost, but they do take, the classic explainers now take 3 weeks to make. Cost just depends on like the types of, you know, who's involved and how much staff we have. So that's a more complicated number, but that's that classic one. That's why we have, if you saw that slide with all the different models we have, we're doing, we're making videos that are very different and that don't take as long, and that is one. And of course, some that take even longer. But the average for those classic ones is 3 weeks.
Thank you. I really appreciated the national perspective explainer video going through each individual section. I think it's something that's really actionable on a local level for smaller markets especially. I work for kind of an NPR and PBS merged organization, and so I feel very similar to how kind of siloed you described coming into Vox and how you had some journalists working on like a video team working. And I'm wondering if you could share a little bit more about the experience of bringing those kind of disparate teams together to be able to be interested in making content like that in a way that serves multiple audiences that look at your website.
Yeah, you know, it was a journey and not a bad one, but I think the idea was like, okay, audio is different, so we're going to work together. Video is different, text is different. And the teams kind of had to work really in silos to create the work that they did. And I think that's okay because I've mostly been in legacy newsrooms where everything was in service of the text and individual teams couldn't really have their own identity, you know? And so I'm really excited that we were able to bridge that. And it's a couple things. One, when I started at Vox, I did this thing where I would think about each piece of journalism we do has a certain approach. It clarifies the chaos. It connects something to the larger stakes. It reveals something hidden in plain sight. It's not just an explainer. There's more to it. And that has to be applied across all platforms. It's platform agnostic. The other things I did is, you know, really have people work together. Like this video, it was their decision, but I said, like, politics, you need one meeting that includes video, audio, and text, and you can have your own smaller meetings for logistics, but you need to work together. And then just now I did something even more drastic that I haven't really seen newsrooms do, which is our executive editor, who used to be the executive editor for text, he doesn't just oversee text now. He oversees our politics team, our Today Explained podcast, and our Future Perfect team. We have video reporting next to a podcast, next to a text team, and we've blown up those silos. And that has been extraordinary because now people really have to connect and work with each other. And the thing is, the great thing we have going for ourselves is that journalism isn't different on the platforms. It is a unified mission on all platforms. Now it's just about like working together and sharing those ideas. And we've been seeing really, there's been a lot of progress and a lot of great work there.
Hey there. First off, thank you so much for doing this today. It's been a wonderful conversation. One thing that I was sitting there thinking about was just like how much like newsroom culture plays into this, and how, you know, we talked a lot during this about we need innovation, we need things to change. I think there are also a lot of people understand, like, you go back to your newsroom and say we need to change things, and then there are a bunch of people who don't want to change things. They want things to stay comfortable and stay the same. So I wonder if you could talk a bit about how, as you're going through this period of experimentation, how you as a leader are facilitating some of this experimentation and also getting buy-in from different parts of the newsroom to try new things. What are you doing? How do you facilitate that in the Vox newsroom?
Yeah. I think because I worked in legacy newsrooms where change is a lot harder, it was almost easier at Vox. And not disparaging them, it's just like a different environment. But still at Vox, I mean, when I came in, I was, I think because I've worked at so many different places too, I knew if I tried to make Vox Atlantic or the Atlantic the Washington Post, that would be a huge mistake. So what I start with is like really understanding where I work and then understanding what motivates people. So when I think about buy-in, I think a lot about what motivates people. And you have to build a relationship, you have to understand it, and you have to connect with people and get that buy-in. I think that's so incredibly important. When I came to Vox, instead of telling people, and at the Atlantic, instead of telling people the kinds of stories we should be doing, I went with them story by story to think about which stories work and which ones should we do more of and which ones don't. And we did that exercise together. So instead of it was top down, me telling everyone, a lot of people were involved in that process. But you also have to be, as a leader, be able to say, like, we're doing this. And that's it. And that's hard. But you also you just have to do that, or else you're not going to get anywhere. But I think it's worth having that buy-in and that connection. And I really try to do that first.
Speaking of leaders, my boss wants the last question.
And I want us to be taken the right way because I think a lot of us are still thinking it through. Given what's going on with the administration now, where the attack on DEI is really in some ways a cover for an attack on women, an attack on people of color, and we're probably going to see more of that. I'm wondering if you see or worry about opportunities for women and for journalists of color going into the industry these days. Because, I mean, I've had conversations with, young folks, young women in it's a different atmosphere now. You don't ask about how many women do you have on your team or what are your programs, and she said it's almost like these guys, they just wanted to go back to the way it was before. And I'm wondering, journalism has gone through this really important evolution in terms of different points of view, and I'm wondering if you feel a vibe shift and what that might look like.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like there is definitely a vibe shift, but I will say, as a woman of color, and I think some other people, other journalists of color would say this as well, we're not surprised. We were like waiting for this to happen. It felt like that moment when the doors did open and there was more encouragement would not last forever, because I think people have been through this. You read the history books, you know this. And so I think some of us were bracing for this. And it is, the attacks are real. What's happening is real. I see organizations, it's tough to you don't want to get sued and you have to change programs. It's all happening. I still have hope and belief that it's hard, but those voices are needed more than ever. You see why people one of my dear friends, Ested Herndon, he's a reporter at the New York Times, and what he's been able to do is that he's been able to share stories that maybe you didn't quite think about really outside the bubble and what's happening in the Democratic Party, and it's because he talks to people outside the bubble, and that is amazing. And I think you can do that no matter what your background is, and it needs to happen more than it's happening. And I'm hoping that that kind of journalism that doesn't stop, but that more diverse people will keep coming in from all backgrounds. But I think it's up to leaders, and I know the journalism leaders aren't shying away from that. I think some things have made it harder, but I don't think it's going to be like this. I think we were all expecting it's going to happen, and I think there's more people of color in these spaces who do want to help as well. And you don't have to be a person of color to make that difference. I think people recognize it, and it's not going to be like this forever. It's always been a little bit hard. It'll continue to be maybe harder, but it'll get easier and then harder again. So that's how I see it.
Swati, we are so appreciative of your time, of your optimism. of your Northeastern experience. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, everyone.